for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emma Brown, and I'm the founder of Whimble. We are a care tech platform based where I am in Ottawa, and we exist to make personal care more accessible. So we connect people who need short term, urgent, or more flexible, client directed care with experienced vetted attendance on demand. We also work closely with event organizers and community partners to ensure accessibility includes real human support, not just physical infrastructure, although that's a good start, but not the end of the journey by any means. Today's conversation is one I'm especially excited about, given the opening ceremony for the Paralympics is happening next week. So I feel like parasports are like going to be the hot topic for the next month or so. So it's great to have our guest joining us. And yeah, she fits perfectly at the intersection of sport, leadership, disability, and community. So I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So without further ado, I'm incredibly honored to be joined by Meghan Hines. She's a co-founder and president of PowerHockey Canada. Meghan has been a driving force in building and growing the sport of power hockey across the country, creating space for athletes with disabilities not just to participate, but to compete, lead, and thrive. Meghan also received the David C. Onley Award for Leadership and Accessibility at the annual Lieutenant Governor's Legacy Award ceremony here in the province of Ontario last year. She's legit. And what I love about Meghan's work is an advocacy as it goes beyond the game, and it's about building systems that actually work for people and lifting everybody up. So thank you so much for being with us today, Meghan.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Excited to try and dig into this topic.
Yeah, we were just chatting before we started the webinar that Meghan added a question at the beginning that I think is a great question. And I've seen a few power hockey games, but I'm by no means an expert. So for me and anyone else on the call who might not be super familiar with power hockey, could you tell us a little bit about the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. So power hockey is one of the few sports that is accessible to power chair users. And so basically, it's based off the rules of ice hockey. It's played on a gym floor, and everyone typically uses a power chair. In some smaller areas, you might have manual chair users playing alongside power chair users, but generally speaking, everyone's playing in a power chair. It's a distinctively inclusive sport in the sense that a broad range of people with disabilities can play. So you have individuals like myself who have maybe limited or no upper body strength. I have muscular dystrophy, so I loosely attach my stick to my chair. But you also have individuals who have full upper body strength and can really do the stick handling and the goal scoring type thing, and they're able to play as well. And despite physical ability, everyone has a role in the sport, and everyone's role is important. In order for the individuals who have that upper body strength to score goals, you need individuals like myself to help block and help create those lanes or assist, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a really kind of sport that anyone can find the ability to play. And it's just like a really fun sport as well. It's a one that has a really amazing kind of community vibe, like many para sports and sports as well. And one that I've been playing for a very long time. So it's stuck with me for years. Yeah, I could go on forever about the sport, but that's
Okay, we got 45 minutes. I have watched a few games in Ottawa, and it's like it's a really great vibe because like people are obviously very into it, like they're competitive and get really into it. And then at the end of the game, it's like the community building piece is really nice. Can you tell us a bit about your role with Power Hockey Canada?
Yeah, definitely. So I wear a few different hats. One is I'm a player. So I've been fortunate to be selected to represent Toronto, but also Canada at international competitions. So I've been with the support of my fellow players and coaches, been able to develop through the sport. But also I kind of support the organization at the administrative levels, helping grow the sport, like you mentioned, across the country, create opportunities, also internationally, sit on the international board as well, type thing. So growing the sport for the world type thing too. So just my main goal is really to get the word out there about power hockey, the sport, make sure everyone has the opportunity to try it out if they want to. Yeah, for myself with my fellow board of directors on my team, just working on various initiatives to grow the sport internationally, nationally, support coaches, support volunteers, any way to just create a better experience for everyone involved.
Amazing. It and like thinking about it, obviously, as a sport itself is really important, and then it's also creating a space where leadership can show up in different ways. So I'd be curious from your perspective, like what are the some of the most important leadership lessons that you see or feel when on the court and then coming off the court?
Definitely. So I think it's interesting. Like I said, really grew up in the sports. I started playing when I was like 9 or 10, I think, around that. Obviously, their go-tos, things like teamwork, working in a team towards that common goal, finding the different strengths that individuals do have and playing off those strengths and how you can really, again, create that common goal as a team to win or defend, whatever kind of the goal is
Mhm.
type thing. So that kind of side of things. Communication is always key. And so working with kind of the team in terms of what that looks like to whether it's on the floor, but also off the court as well, how you can provide feedback to each other in a way that sort of people are receptive to it and helps again create a stronger kind of team environment. I think perseverance and resilience is another one as well, especially from the time that I've had experiences on the international side of things. Canada's newer to the international sport. The rules are a bit different compared to what we play in North America. And so there have been some tough games where we've lost 33 to nothing. It's a tougher sport kind of thing on that.
Build character.
Exactly. Builds character, builds, just keep working at it kind of thing.
Mhm.
Again, looking at what are those small wins. Of course, that's a very extreme loss that we had, for instance, but looking at the fact that like when we did have that loss, none of us were using sport chairs. We only had a couple months to repair and get used to those rules and working together to figure out, okay, sure, on paper, that's a really bad loss, but what did we gain from that experience and how do we continue to grow? So I think all those type of experience are things that I brought into kind of my education as I was growing up, but also into my employment and yeah, very transferable skills in that sense. Even like on
Mhm.
my resume, for instance, when I was and now, but also when I was getting my first quote unquote big girl job type thing, including the fact that I have been a para athlete. I have helped on the organizational side of kind of the sport as well, and the skills that helped me gain and were transferable to the workforce too. So yeah, lots of different experiences I've brought in to my day to day for sure.
Amazing. I didn't send you this question in advance, but I'm curious, like, what the coolest place is that you've traveled to for a power hockey tournament.
Ooh, I've been very privileged that I have gotten to travel a lot for it. I think probably Australia. Australia is definitely the one where my friend lives there now, and I think in winter it goes down to 10 degrees, and that's like
Mhm.
cold for them. So I'm like, that sounds like a great place to be. But no, it
Yeah.
was beautiful when we went there. But we travel a lot to Europe because, like I said,
Mhm.
like this sport is mostly based in Europe. So yeah, it's been really cool to travel because any opportunity I can travel, I'll take. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a warm weather
Amazing.
place is my go-to usually.
Amazing. I know Scott Haycock here in Ottawa. Shout out to Scott. But I feel like he once told me like all the places he's been, and I was like, oh man, that's impressive. That must be a big undertaking to get like a whole team to a very far away city, find accessible hotels, yeah, and make sure everybody has a good time. It's very impressive.
100%. I think that leads into yeah, the skills because the other hat I wear is kind of like a team manager in some aspects of
Mhm.
the kind of teams and certain teams you travel with. And exactly to your point, getting 10 individuals who use wheelchairs, plus some of us use sport chairs, that could be up to 14 to 15 wheelchairs getting on a plane. We're going to Finland coming up for the World Cup.
Oh,
That was even a challenge of some aircraft don't take certain size wheelchairs. So
mhm.
that probably took 3 to 4 months of kind of working with our broader team, figuring out what airline will take us kind of thing. And even the aspect of sometimes you have a short turnaround, like an hour layover. Inevitably, if you have 10 individuals in wheelchairs getting the chairs on and off, that's going to take a long time. We're not going to make that connection. So, yeah, all these little things you go throughout,
Yeah,
but there's something as simple as even getting to your location, let alone
yeah,
what you do once you're there, kind of
yeah.
thing.
Please tell me you're going to Finland once it's warmed up a bit.
Thankfully, yes, we go at the end of May.
Okay, okay.
Warmer than now.
Okay. So don't leave the frigid Canadian winter just to go to the Finland frigid winter.
Yeah.
Okay, this is awesome. So let's talk maybe a little bit more generally about like access and inclusion in sports. So power hockey, I'm assuming, can create opportunities that don't always exist in traditional sports spaces. So what does it mean to you or to like the community at large of like creating a truly inclusive environment in sport?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it goes back to this point about how there's an opportunity for anyone to participate who wants to participate when it comes to power chair users in the sport. And the first few games of a new player could be like, hey, let's figure out the best way for you to hold or attach your stick kind of thing in that sense. But also throughout a longer career of someone who's playing, some abilities can change. And so maybe that means someone changing into different roles on the court. So we've had players, one of my teammates was started as a really strong forward, then he moved into defense, and then he moved into goalie kind of thing. And then eventually he transitioned into kind of stepping away, being coaching, and then into the organizational side. So I think there's a lot of different pathways for people to get involved. And that's really that inclusive environment, I think, is where someone, it's not just a one size fits all approach, but there are many ways. We have a lot of individuals who have different types of wheelchairs or drive their wheelchairs differently, but that doesn't inhibit the fact that everyone can find a way to play and a very broad age range too. We have
Mhm.
players sometimes in some leagues that are as young as 8, 9, 10 years old sometimes. And we had one of our top goalies in Toronto for the longest time was like in his 60s kind of thing. It's a very broad age range as well. All individuals who identify, no matter what their identities are, like everyone is welcome at the end of the day, but it's also an opportunity for people in the broader community to participate. So we have coaches, we have volunteers where people can get involved and learn about the sport and learn about the broader disabled community as well and support from that perspective. So I think, yeah, going back to your question about what does inclusion look like, I think it's something where if anyone wants to get involved, they can find their way. And the organization and the sport and the overall team is there to support in any way we can.
The one of the games you just made me think of that I went to here in Ottawa, they were setting up because I guess I'm assuming this is the same for most like games and practices, but you actually have to like set up the boards when you get to the gym with like temporary kind of plastic or rubber barriers and but yeah, so they were setting up the boards and people were arriving and getting off like paratranspo and stuff. And someone had shown up who'd never played before and they were a manual chair user. And one of the organizers, this was at Carlton, and one of the organizers was like, "Oh, I know someone who has a spare power chair in the residences. I'll be right back." And he like motored over the residence, grabbed this extra power chair, brought like motor back with it beside him. And then the person who came was able to hop into the power chair and give it a try. So it was like, yeah, just such a nice vibe. I assume nothing is perfect. I'm assuming there are still some barriers, whether it's like physical barriers at the sports gymnasiums or social or systemic barriers to prevent people from participating. Like, what do you see being the biggest barriers still right now?
Yeah, I think a couple of the go-to barriers I think that I see are people not knowing that the sport exists, kind of thing. I think that's one of our biggest barriers we have still, is that a lot of time when I say I play power hockey, everyone's, oh yeah, sledge hockey, that's a really cool sport. And I was like, that is a very cool sport, definitely. But this is power hockey, it's very
Mhm.
different. People not even knowing it exists and not having the opportunity to participate in that sense. As Power Hockey Canada, we have a lot of conversations with different parasport organizations, local organizations try and get the word out there. I think the other barrier leads into that in the sense that a lot of groups want to see the value, want to start it, but I think when you look at resourcing and especially financial resources and human resources kind of thing to start a program or support a program, the nonprofit sector, every sector, but nonprofit sector in particular is stretched so thin that it's harder for organizations to take on new sports. So I think that's a lot of the time the challenge we have with starting new leagues and stuff. Others can have an opportunity. I think that's a big barrier. And then of course there's a physical barrier. Once you have the buy-in and have the individuals who can support the league and the individuals to come and play, things like finding gym space that's accessible or on Toronto on accessible transit areas, that kind of thing. So the physical barriers type thing in that sense. But yeah, I think the root barrier, the biggest one is really the awareness, especially the fact that, like I said, it's one of only 3 sports that are accessible to power chair users. And there's such a huge market or opportunity.
Mhm.
And a lot of individuals in power chairs may not have the opportunity to participate in other sports if they don't have the ability, for instance, to play a more well-known para sport type thing and jump into a manual chair or trench or whatever it may be. And yeah, it just motivates myself and the broader board to find the opportunities out there and find the people on the ground that are the champions and the advocates and want to really support and have the capacity to lift it off the ground and everything.
Mhm. I'm sure you've like thought of this already, but we were filming something at Scotiabank Arena last week. Have you ever thought about doing like a trying to get in for a demo during halftime of a Raptors game or something? Like and just doing a quick setup on the hard court and then like getting everyone in the arena where the sport exists so either they themselves or they can share it with people they know who might be interested in testing it out.
No, that's an awesome idea. I think a lot of it's about finding those connections. So if you have any
Mhm.
connections that
I'll
really,
send you. I got a guy's email that he may soon regret giving me his email, but it's too late. He can't take it back.
there you go. But even that, I think the more opportunities we have to demo the sport and get that word out there, I think
Mhm.
is amazing. And I think it really leads into the challenge we often have is we'll demonstrate the sport and people will be
Mhm.
interested, but then there's no kind of pathway for them to play. So a
Mhm.
lot of time it's like getting that engagement, but then it's also like finding people on the ground
Yeah.
in that sense. But I think like you said that the awareness leads into the people being engaged
Yep.
and people wanting to support. So yeah, I'll take any opportunity we can
Yeah.
get to get the
It's
word out.
all a marketing funnel.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. And I have a whole kind of section dedicated to confidence. So I'd love to talk about for the people that do become aware of the sport, they're able to overcome the barriers and they can participate. I'm really curious how you see participation as like a confidence builder for the athletes.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases when I see newer players who come and they have that confidence, they feel comfortable in the sport, and seeing them score the first goal for the first time or do an amazing block or something, and that confidence builder is just really powerful to see in terms of the
Mhm,
impact of sport. Because a lot of the times when it comes to different sports, we don't see sports that are accessible. I don't see myself represented all the time in para sport
mhm,
outside of power hockey and the few other sports. Like when I look at the Paralympics, such an amazing, inspiring athlete, but a lot of the sports I couldn't play myself type thing physically. And so when I see other individuals like myself who have had those experiences and then see that they are able to participate and have that role, it really just it does lead into a lot of other things. And I've even seen a lot of players, like I said, people start very young, like myself when I started,
mhm,
but individuals who grow and individuals who have that sense of community building as well, having that network, was something that was so helpful for me growing up as well because of the broad age range. I had friends who were in their 20s and 30s. I saw them working or volunteering or going to school, whatever it may be, type thing. And then I was like, hey, if they can do that, why can't I, kind of thing. And so
mhm,
it gave me those role models to look up to. So I think both from a confidence perspective in the sport, but also the long term, like external benefits that really power hockey and parasport provides. I think it really just helps about having that sense of community that you can lean on.
mhm,
I have a lot of friends who are not disabled and very close friends, but I can really lean on my friends who are disabled in a different way to share those experiences around, oh, that was so frustrating, that XYZ scenario, and we can just complain to each other about it kind of thing. So you have that kind of sounding board, but also like work together and be like, hey, like this actually really worked for me when I encountered that. And so like those ideas that kind of brainstorming together, I guess, in a
yeah,
sense. And I think on the other side as well, like we see a lot of kind of family members that kind of come as well to this our like power hockey games. And I think a lot of times parents or others may be like, oh, I don't know if my child can do this or my friend, my
mhm,
sibling, whatever. But then seeing their whoever thrive, it gives them, okay, like everything's good kind of thing, in a sense that helps them. Because even a lot of individuals who, from a traveling perspective, I've been supportive of kind of players, but also their family members in terms of like, how did you do this? How do you travel? How do you do that? And so just again, being that support system for each other, I think
mhm.
helps in terms of all aspects of daily life.
I remember my brother, who I think is on this call right now, has been a sled hockey player for a long time, and I sometimes get the sense that their tournaments are more about the partying around the games than the actual games.
There's a lot of
It could
fun.
be exaggerated, but I don't think I am in some cases.
You got to work hard, play hard. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a good motto.
fun times that happen after the games, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Even to that point, like the fact that in terms of what power hockey has given me as well outside of that is I have such a big network of individuals internationally,
Mhm,
like when we go to tournaments or in the US or broader in
mhm,
Canada. And so it's really cool the opportunities it's given me
mhm,
to, yeah, like I only see these people, let's say once or twice a year when we go to tournaments, staying connected on social media or yeah, just being able to connect and learn and being like, hey, I'm coming to visit your country. Can you give me some
mhm,
tips and some contacts on accessible transportation or whatever? It's so valuable to have in the
mhm.
sport.
That's amazing. Have you seen any curious if you have any, like, really specific wins or specific moments where you saw someone, like, through the course of a game or a season? Or I know you mentioned, like, someone scoring their first goal, but, do you have any other examples of, yeah, where you were able to observe like, confidence building process in an individual?
Yeah, I think kind of those are the easier ones to point to, of course, like someone having that first goal or the first
Mhm,
win or whatever it may be. But I think over a longer period of time, there was a player that I observed and he started when he was like maybe 12, 13 or so. He was very quiet, kind of course, it's intimidating, especially again with kind of a lot of older players playing
mhm,
and a mix kind of thing. But we really brought him under our wing as a team as well. And then seeing him come out of his shell through the sport and just through those, like you said, like at tournaments, there's some socializing that happens kind of thing. And so just
mhm,
seeing him become like more vocal and more just like engaged from,
mhm,
actively in that sense was really powerful to see in the sense of seeing going back to confidence, seeing his confidence grow and seeing his comfort level grow kind of thing. And so I think that just like really rewarding to see in terms of the benefits again, both on and off the floor that the sport
mhm.
really provides to everyone involved.
That's amazing. And I guess you personally probably had a bit of a similar journey, starting, like, quite young and then getting more and more involved. What, like, compelled you to start building power hockey? I assume you were, like, started building it from the ground up, basically?
Yeah, ever since I started, I've been involved, obviously not when I was 9 or 10, but as I got older, I really saw it as a way to build those skills because throughout high school, for instance, I wasn't really able to get those traditional roles like working as a waitress or working in retail kind of thing. And so I looked at other ways in volunteering that I could build skills that are transferable to my education and employment. And so got involved with my local league, kind of things like organizing tournaments. And so those I think are super valuable experiences, being someone who's 16, 17, organizing an international tournament kind of thing, and all the different aspects involved and everything from like project planning to contacts to relationship building and stuff. So I think that really helped me. But then about, yeah, 6 years ago now, we started Power Hockey Canada. And it was really just a way we had the opportunity to go to the World Cup in Italy a few years prior. We saw how advanced the sport was in Europe and how there's different support systems in terms of the government provides more funding and more support in some countries. That definitely helps. So we saw there's this big opportunity. Let's come together, a group of us, and figure out how we can advance the sport further, really through creating more leagues, but also the support aspects as well. So things like Power Hockey Canada, we just launched in the fall, a coaches training program to support coaches because that's one of our automatic questions, understandably, is when we're approaching to start a new league, they're like, hey, what sports do you have for coaches? And so being able to develop that. And so, yeah, always kind of look for ways to my full-time job on top of my real full-time job type thing in terms of just supporting the organization and the sport. I think for me, I just see value in the sport and I want everyone to have an opportunity to participate, an opportunity to experience what I have, at least try it kind of thing is my big thing. Maybe you won't stick with it as long as I have, but at least if you can say you tried it, then maybe it's not for you, then that's cool. But at least you had the opportunity, which I think outside of the disabled community, there are so many opportunities for kids to try or young adults and adults to try different sports, but there's really not that much again for power traders specifically. I really just want it to be an opportunity for everyone to get involved if they want to, type thing.
Amazing. Yeah, I think in Ottawa, I feel like at least once or twice a year we get flyers or notices about try it days where they'll set up at a kind of central location and people can just get out and give it a go and see how it feels and if it's something they're interested in pursuing. One thing we haven't really talked about too much yet, touched on it earlier, is around the funding piece. So I guess I have a two-part question. The more general question was like, and again, you've touched on some of these, but what are the like explicit biggest challenges from the national perspective on growing adaptive sports? And if one of those is funding, what's that advocacy look like for growing awareness and growing more resources to fund these types of leagues or projects or initiatives?
Yeah, I think the two biggest, from an organizational side, the two biggest barriers we have to working on the initiatives outside of what we chatted about before is really funding and like human resources capacity.
Mhm,
Like our board, we're fully volunteer run. We have no full-time employees. So it's really like said our full-time side hustle for many of us
mhm,
kind of thing. And funding is the biggest thing as well. Like right now, to go to all these international tournaments, we as Power Hockey Canada try and fundraise as much as we can to both support the player costs and the support individuals costs, but also the operational costs, things like when we travel to Europe, we have to play in sport chairs because our everyday chairs are just not competitive to that.
mhm,
And so rental costs of that or gym time here. And so all those costs really do add up. And again, we do try and fundraise as much as we can, but that is even a barrier in the sense that
mhm,
because we're not yet, I'll say yet, a Paralympic sport, we are actually counted out of a lot of funding opportunities
mhm,
too. Understandably, a lot of organizations need to narrow down their criteria for giving funds, but that's a barrier. And again, going back to the awareness piece, people not understanding what the sport is and the really untapped market that they could tap into. So we really try and tell that story to obtain that funding, especially since the pandemic, fundraising has been even more of a challenge than it was even
mhm,
prior to that. So I think that, and then if we could have even one full-time person, that would be like a dream kind of thing, just to help. We have so many ideas type thing that we want to push, and we try and do as much as we can within the capacity we have. And I'm really proud of our organization and our board and just
mhm.
all the stakeholders we have who really do support us and what we have been able to accomplish over the past however many years type thing. But a big dream in terms of just one FTE would be amazing to help us even get even more things off the ground type thing.
Yeah.
So one day, one day.
Yeah, awesome. And you said you have 2 full-time jobs, but, like, I think you have 3 plus full-time jobs because you also talk about how you're a self-manager on direct funding, and that's a whole other full-time job. So I don't know how many hours are in your day. That's impressive.
Somehow I make it all work. I feel like when I have downtime, I'm like, what do I do with all my time? Kind of thing.
What do you
It's so
mean?
weird.
What's this rest thing you're talking about?
Rest.
Yeah. Do you have anyone on your team who handles like grant writing or like how do you approach the actual like when there are opportunities that you're eligible for, how do you go after those?
Yeah, it's really an all hands on deck type thing. So we really lean on different kind of skill sets we have on the boards. We have a couple individuals who have experience in kind of the sport management, kind of sport organizational side of things. We have one individual who's a lawyer, legal side, but
Mhm,
also marketing background as well. We have different perspectives of, we have a lot of players on the board, so lived experience too. So for whatever initiative we're working on, we bring it to the table and say, okay, this is what we need to do kind of thing. Like, first of all, who has time, who has capacity, and who has the right skill set to help. And then just going from there. So it's really just through a lot of things. Like I've never thought I'd be a marketing social media person, but I've learned kind of thing where if I need to jump in and do that, then Canva is my best friend kind
mhm,
of thing in that, or pulling together coffee for social media texts and kind of
mhm.
thing. It's also cool to be able to develop different skill sets
Yeah.
than that I probably wouldn't have been able to develop in my day-to-day role or
Mhm,
whatever role kind of thing, just through
mhm,
this. So a lot of that skill development is continues to happen ongoing
mhm.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. You guys are like truly running like a startup and like figuring it out as you go.
Pretty much. We just gotta test and learn thing at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there any like major things that you're and again, maybe this can be like Power Hockey Canada's like long-term vision or like you personally, but what do you really want to see change in Canada in say 5, 10 years from now?
I would love to have a program in every major city, kind of thing. That would be my goal. Again, a lot of it comes down to, again, finding those people on the ground who can facilitate it. So having not only a program, but like a thriving program with a lot of individuals, having, this is probably not a 5 to 10 year thing, but having more
Mhm,
funding for our high performance kind of Team Canada team as
mhm,
well. Right now, we're fortunate we're able to go to about one tournament a year. But if I look in Europe, they have tournaments twice a month. Sometimes the athletes are going to. Like one of my kind of our friends went to, I think it was 9 tournaments last year that he went to, and he competed in, I don't know, 70 matches or something like just in general. So it's like understandably, Canada's kind of further behind because we just don't have the ability to participate in that many kind of tournaments or practice time or that kind of thing. So that would be my dream. But of course, Europe is easier in the sense of like the geography. There are players that are in Belgium and they'll play in the Dutch league because it's like an hour drive. I wish. Whereas we have players like in Toronto and players in Calgary, but that's like what, a 3 or 4 hour flight kind of
yeah,
thing. We're definitely getting there. We're progressing a lot. I'm proud to see how much we have advanced in a short amount of time and in the fact that we don't have the infrastructure in
mhm,
place and the ability to do that necessarily because of geographically speaking and that kind of
mhm,
thing. But yeah, I think still opportunities to get there. So that would be, I guess my end goal would be more programs at the recreational level and kind of the kind of starting level, but also more opportunities for a high performance team as well. And just like representation too. So
mhm,
ideally having our sport in the Paralympics one day, so people
mhm.
see that as an option, that would be like amazing as well.
Is there like a major international tournament hosted in Canada ever, or do you always have to travel elsewhere to get to those big tournaments?
Yeah, so we have the Power Hockey Cup. So last year that took place in Philadelphia. So that was that. And there's different tournaments that take place across
Mhm,
Canada as well. Like we have a tournament in golf coming up in May. So we have a few teams
mhm,
coming to that. So yeah, mostly it's the local individual local leagues that kind of support a lot of the tournaments and stuff. But yeah, I think our North American Power Hockey Cup would be our big North American tournament that we
mhm.
have typically every 2 years. So yeah,
Where's the next host city for that? Do you know?
still to be determined. Yeah, not sure yet, but we'll see.
Yeah. I had no idea that the sport was so developed in Europe, and I've made a mental note for like our Whimble go-to-market expansion plans of like when we go to expand to Europe, use the para hockey leagues as that channel. If it's that developed, that's very impressive.
Well, even if you look at like the Dutch league or Italian league, they have upwards of 100, maybe 200 players, I think, playing in those leagues at a time. And so huge market audience for Wimble once you
Wow,
expand over there. But yeah, it's just, yeah, amazing to see how much the sport's taken off there for sure.
that's amazing. Okay, one last question. I sometimes I get a bit fixated on the negative and how much work there is to do. Yeah, I'm curious what's giving you hope right now. So, from a positive perspective, like what's giving you hope or excites you about the next generation of athletes you're starting to see come through your programs?
Yeah, I think you're just kind of seeing, we've had specifically in Toronto, we've had a lot more players this year come. I want to say about 5 or 6 new players. Typically, we get one or two type thing each
Mhm,
year. And it's really just cool to see how many players are coming, how excited they are going back to, I feel like I'm being repetitive, but seeing like kind of those small wins that individuals have as they start the sport, and how eager individuals are, and how like our tenured athletes are really taking them under their wing as well and supporting that development. I think that's just a huge positive I always see in the sport. While our, for instance, our Friday night games in Toronto are at the recreational level, they're just as competitive, they're just as intense, and we have like really that skill sharing as well. So we have tenured athletes who are sharing ideas like, hey, have you tried holding your stick this way? Or hey, when you do that, try and move this way, or try and carry the ball this way, or whatever it may be. So I think it's just like the excitement around when your players come, I think is awesome to see. And I think as well, the positives, like I said, going back to the international side about how far we've come in such a short time, and just how the international community is recognizing that, I think as well. Like at our last tournament we went to in 2022 for the World Cup, we drastically improved from 2018, partly because we all had sport chairs, so that definitely helped. But a lot of players and other coaches were like, hey, like we really saw some improvement there. Of course, we were still losing by a lot in some games kind of thing, but like going back to that sort of small wins of working together as a team, like what are our goals as a team? I would love to say we're gonna come and win the World Cup coming up. That's not gonna happen most likely, kind of thing. But what
Never say never.
never say never, but there's some
We
amazing.
need a Canadian hockey team to win a gold medal.
Oh my gosh, seriously. The Paralympic team, they
Yeah.
gotta pull it out coming up.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure to redeem ourselves.
Oh, seriously. But yeah, I think as a team coming together and figuring out like what does success look like at the end of this tournament that we have coming up. And yeah, I think there's all exciting things on the horizon, especially even as an organization, like starting some new leagues. We have a league starting in Niagara coming up, a launch event coming up in about a month. Yeah, just excited to see more opportunities available and more people get involved.
Amazing. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about power hockey and everything. So I definitely
We're
appreciate
gonna get you on that Raptors basketball court for a
it.
demo. That's my new life goal.
Amazing. Love that.
Okay, take care, Megan.
Bye.
Bye.